r/AskReddit. To all of the people who work the late shift at convenience stores, such as Wawa, 7-Eleven, Quickie Mart, what is the craziest story that you have from your time working there past midnight? A friend of mine found out during a robbery that the emergency button under the counter actually just locks you in the store with a now panicking armed robber. His boss later told him it was to prevent people from getting away. I mean, it did also put in a call to the alarm company, who eventually called the police, but for a good 25 minutes he really thought he was going to die there. There was a time a woman drove her car into the 7-Eleven I worked overnights at. All started when a guy no-called no-showed again. I get called in, so a guy doesn't have to work 24 straight hours. Goes well, I'm tired, counting cash 4 AM and all of a sudden I hear a loud noise behind me. Then the rack of cigarettes behind me rains down on me like a waterfall. Once the cigarettes stopped, I used colorful language to ask what was happening to myself, but out loud, and go check outside. There's a Jeep pulled back into the spot. I check if the driver is okay, and she is. But I hear through her phone, that didn't seem to be on speakerphone. How the fuck did you crash into a 7-Eleven? So I call the cops and the owner. It all gets worked out, but when the cops arrived they first laughed, then breathalyzed and alphabet tested the woman to see if she was drunk. She was not, just a tired/shitty driver. I'm betting shitty, based on the phone call I overheard. The owner trusted me from then on, as I ended up handling the initial insurance portion and regional manager pictures of the damage. The customers were impressed that I didn't shit myself when it happened, and I got this story now. Worked overnight at a Quick Trip for 2.5 years. So many drunks. People who'd shit/vom all over the bathroom. Had one guy puke from the middle of the candy all the way to the front door. Had another guy fall down and break the roller grill. Had a guy threaten to kill and then fuck me because his food stamp card declined. Didn't happen on my shift, but this one regular who would come in and tell everyone that she was my aunt and flip out over trivial shit, threw a temper tantrum one night, and it took 4 cops to take her down. The one worker who'd get plastered on her nights off at the bar next door and draw dicks on her coworkers' cars. Okay, that was me. Whataburger ex-worker here. Night shifts vary. Saturday of the end of spring break, a house party was broken up. All the kids came to Whataburger all of a sudden. Saw the Snapchat videos of the cops breaking it up. Kids thought the corner table was a good rolling table for joints. At the end of the shift saw the same cops that were in the videos. I told them the party they broke up just rolled through here. They laughed. The 4th of July, I did a 10 PM shift to 5 PM. Stoners, drunk people. It was busy. I love the chaos of drunk people. Guy walked behind the counter. New Year's Eve, jam-packed. Our manager gave us beads to wear for morale boost. Some drunk lady thought we earned them, like they do at Mardi Gras. I said no. I lied to her saying we danced for them. So of course, she wants the shiny beads. I told her I did little teapot dance for them. She drunkenly did the dance in the lobby. I said it wasn't good enough, so she huffed and sat down. My manager thought it was funny. All in all pretty sane for Whataburger. I ruled the diner and kept it in check. At a Missouri-based convenience store, had a guy in our parking lot doing what looked to be takeout 1 in the morning. He would do the motions, then kickflip off the side of the building and go back to doing the motions. We told him he needed to stop doing that. Goes to the pumps, takes the nozzle off, buzzes for inside pay, chooses a grade of fuel and splashes it in his mouth. He spits it out, chooses another grade, and does it again. This is the point where we called the cops. After he decided he was done mouthwashing with fuel, he comes in and just starts loading up with bags of chips, candy bars, a single 12-ounce Bud Light from a 6-pack. Half of the stuff was opened. Cop got there, told the guy he had to pay, then put him in the back of his car. Word from the cop the next day was that he was an extremely disturbed individual and he was admitted to a mental ward. Creepy as shit. That was by far the weirdest. I've had a 45-year-old drunk lady dry hump me, people taking juices in the bathroom, and playing finger paint all over the walls. I had an idiot one time that stuffed a 6-pack down his pants, walked down the aisle, dropped it on accident, and had 5 cans drop and just roll away, and he walks out the door. By far the most disgusting one was someone placed the 2 plunger in the bathroom on adjacent walls and balanced a piece of shit on them. I just couldn't put my head around that one. I didn't personally experience this one, but down the road at a competing convenience store, they had a guy one night come in, sit down at one of their tables and fillet himself from ear to ear. Even hearing the story still bothers me. Oh man, I have a great one. So I worked at this gas station that constantly got robbed. One night it was me and this woman. We are dealing with a couple of customers when these 2 guys walk in, grab 4 suitcases of beer, and walk out the door. They were so slick about it, we almost didn't notice. They peeled out from the parking lot in an old white Ford F-150. So we called the cops, gave them our statements, went on with our lives. Maybe 2 hours later we see an old white F-150 tearing down the street followed by fucking 9 cop cars. We're like holy shit. Maybe 15 minutes later we see that old white F-150 tearing down the street going the other way, followed by about 14 cop cars. Not an exaggeration, I counted. So the rest of our shift goes by, about 5 hours and we've forgotten about it. A cop stops in shortly before I punch out and is like, yeah, they were in a stolen truck, we got the guys. So I clock out, get in my car, go to leave, and have to pause while this tow truck trundles on by. I pull in behind it. What's it towing? That same fucking old white Ford F-150. Not super crazy, but a few years ago I worked 3rd shift at Walgreens. I was working and noticed a car in the parking lot with its lights on. Didn't think much of it. An hour or 2 later they were still there, so I told my manager. We went out to investigate, not supposed to do this, and noticed the car had a lot of damage on the driver's side of the car and the driver was passed out on the steering wheel. We knocked on the window, and they woke up, and were clearly wasted, and we noticed there was a kid in a child seat in the back. Long story short, we called the police and they gave them a sobriety test and arrested them. Saw their mugshot on the local newspaper website a few days later. Felt bad for the kid. Probably way too late to get in on this, but UHH. Used to work on Bourbon Street, got loads of stories. Found a gun in the urinal while a guy was fighting with one of our shot girls. Take a moment, hide gun, carefully, and ask boss about it. He points to the guy. Guy's got an empty holster. Had a guy pick up a girl from the restroom, because I'm leaving right now. Except she was still using the bathroom. You never wanna be the guy with the mop on Bourbon. Watched this guy argue with a cop about football or something. He started getting mad, then he hit the fucking cop in the jaw. One of the bouncers from down the street walked up and grabbed the guy, while like a billion cops came from God knows where. Fucking prostitute walked up to me with some powder and asked me if I could tell whether or not it was coke. It was crushed Smarties. Had a regular customer nicknamed Spuddy who was a shell-shocked Nam vet. He came in once and gave me $600 and just said hold on to it for me. I might need it one day. I found out later they kept an envelope in the safe for him to make deposits into cause his daughter would steal his disability checks. One day Spuddy came in with a DIIT mangy looking spitz and he goes, gets put mop bucket and a big jug of mop and glow and goes outside. He ties the dog up to the spigot near the entrance of the store and fills up the bucket and gets some good suds going. Then dumps it on the dog. The dog proceeds to attack him and bites him up pretty bad and Spuddy just bails and runs off. Meanwhile the dog is tied up in front and mad as hell and nobody could get in or out. Had to finally call animal control. They get there, accidentally unleash him, and the dog attacked one. If the dog catches, and then ran off, presumably to find Spuddy. I had a guy come into the gas station where I work about a year ago, obviously on drugs, but I have a lot of regulars that are addicts, and most aren't violent, just weird. So he wanders around the aisles, occasionally looking over and staring at me for 10 seconds or so each time. After the last customer leaves, he comes up and pulls out a small pocket knife, the Swiss Army knife kind. Looks at me and say, I was supposed to do something very bad to you, but I decided not to, I think. All while opening and closing this knife. Robbing me is one thing, but this guy just directly threatened my life. He gives me the knife, just hands it to me, tells me to hold on to this for me, looks around for about 15 seconds, and asks for it back. Obviously I shouldn't give it back to him. This dude just threatened to murder me, but this guy's huge. About 6 feet 3 inches 200 pounds lean muscle. He cold killed me with his bare hands, so I just gave it back to him. He tells me to keep my eyes open and leaves. I called the cops after he left. Turns out he's an Iraq war vet who wasn't taking his medicine. Such a shame. I started open carrying my handgun after that though, since the owner was a pro-gun conservative. Really cleared out a lot of the troublemakers, so I haven't had anything that crazy since. I did have a homeless guy try to pay for junk food with jewelry before asking about any houses for sale in the area. This guy wasn't interested in buying a house, if you catch my drift. Oh, and yesterday I found some used needles in the trash, so that was fun. Another time I had this lady comment on my gun, talking about how she wanted one. This was right after trying to sell me a scale that has what I can only imagine is drug residue on it, with other customers in the store. Bold fucking move. She runs to the bathroom for 20 minutes, during which a local police officer comes in to buy some cookies. Perfect timing. My coworker tells him what's up, so he calls for backup, and they search her, and find some heroin and stuff. Turns out she was shooting up in my bathroom, and left some blood on my floor, which upset me the most, because I had to clean that shit up. Seen lots of small weird stuff, but those are the ones I remember the most. I worked briefly at a gas station convenience store. The owner of the gas station, my boss, when he tends the store, he just sits in the back room doing whatever, while he has his German Shepherd chill near the cash register. He somehow trained him to bark 3 times. Whenever a customer comes up to the cash register to pay, my boss will then hear the 3 barks, and walk out of his back room to tend to the customer. The dog only does it for my boss though, but not for me, or any other of his workers. That dog also urinates by standing on the toilet seat into the toilet bowl. This happened in '96 at a store in Live Oak, FL called Suwannee Swifty. We were located on Walker Ave, which at the time was referred to as Crack Alley. On free and sat nights we'd have a huge number of cars in the parking lot and lots of shoplifting. People getting high and drunk in the lot. I'd already had to call 911 on a heart attack in the bathroom and 2 others in the parking lot at different times. Anyway, I was working the store alone and was at the tail end of a double shift that was turning into a triple. I'd been there since 5 AM and it was coming up on 1 AM, and my relief, which happened that night to be my manager, called in drunk and said I'd have to stay till 5 when the next morning shift come in. I was mad as hell, and I could see folks just openly stealing shit and basically daring me to do anything. One of the workers came in from a different location and told me to just shut down for the night. I tried asking people to leave, but they wouldn't. I had maybe 40 people in the store by then. Finally I called the police and then got up on the counter and made the announcement that cops were on their way. Everyone had about 3 minutes to take whatever they wanted and get the fuck out. It took about 3 minutes to clear us out of every case of beer and every 40 of malt liquor, not to mention most of the bread and beef jerky and even the big jar of pickled eggs and pig's feet we kept on the counter. When the last person left, I put a chain and padlock on the door and went home. The next day I came by at lunchtime and police and insurance people were there along with a still drunk manager who showed up hours late for the morning shift and had no idea what was going on. I asked if I was on the schedule for the week and she just slowly shook her head and told me to get out. At McDonald's, we just closed the store and this guy drives up and tries to order anyway, 7 times. He didn't take the hint by the lack of response and starts yelling at us through the mic. We still ignore him, so he pulled up to the front window and knocked on the glass. My manager called out that we are closed, so he rolled up his window and waited for an hour and a half. He just sat out in his car, still at the drive-through window, occasionally flashing us mean looks while we cleaned. We almost called the police, since no one wanted to go outside with him there, but he eventually lost interest and left. I worked at a Harris Teeter in high school and college, grocery store, stocking shelves. I worked at a bunch of different stores, so these were not all in the same place, but 1. Someone running full speed with a cart full of meat at a locked door to steal it. We had 2 entrances, and after 10 PM one of them was locked. Typically you can forcibly push open a sliding door if it doesn't open, but if it's locked in the middle that obviously doesn't work. They busted a pane of glass in the door and tried to grab some steaks and escape. We are talking like 1500 in meat in this cart, not someone just stealing because they were hungry. We also had a regular cop who hung out around the store. He was outside and tackled them in the parking lot. Never knew if the person was trying to break through the door although it would open for them. 2. Another time a hammered drunk middle-aged man comes stumbling through the store. I saw him at the cheese section while I was sticking an aisle. A bar down the street had just closed and he had walked over from there as far as I could tell. No cars in our parking lot, so at least he wasn't driving. He had grabbed some English muffins and almost fell over trying to get some cheese off the top shelf, and again when grabbing some eggs. He starts walking poorly, obviously borderline blackout at this point, and I hear an audible fart from the aisle over. I don't think anything of it until I start to smell shit. I walk over to the next aisle and see a trail of shit going from the frozen section up to the front of the store. But here is where it gets interesting. At the corner, where you would turn right to the bathrooms instead, the items he wanted were tossed on a magazine rack and the shit trail continues in a zigzag pattern to the front door. No attempt to clean himself up, just a long liquid shit trail straight to anywhere but the store. 3. When Molly was big a few times at the store closest to my college, there were people coming in that could not keep their hands off of each other. Not the most interesting, but the lack of public decency made for a good show, I guess. 4. Lil Jon stopped by after a concert. I was outside smoking a cigarette and limo pulls up and driver rolls down the window and asks if we are open. No other grocery store in town was 24/7 and we were right off the interstate. He rolls the window up and 3 very attractive females get out of the back and I see Lil Jon just sitting there in the limo with a drink in his hand. I go back inside kind of confused what Lil Jon was doing bringing these chicks in his limo to a grocery store at 3 AM, assuming we are going to have to decline an alcohol sale to 3 drunk women, since it was past 2 AM in NC and they were obviously hammered. I was going to feel really bad disappointed Lil Jon like that. Never had to though. They just stopped to use the bathroom. Thanks for watching UpGoat Reddit. Try like and subscribe button if it still works.